First things first. Lots of time. Well, I haven't done this in more than a year because last year we were going to do it, and so. But I was going back. What I do, what I do is like when I read something odd, I write it down, and then what's happened is that it took me as long to remember the stuff that I was writing. I'm like, why did I write that down? It took me longer to remember because I had to remember back like a year and stuff like that. So, but I had this one odd news item. This Chinese guy this is not a racist story. The Chinese guy was getting on a plane, and he took a coin and threw it in the jet engine to bring him good luck. I know, and I was like, that is the dumbest thing I ever heard. So I wrote it down, and then I was like, hey, I wonder if it works. This is a lot of fun. Now, I was going to throw pennies, but they're lighter. And I wouldn't throw quarters. Anyway, so this guy throws a coin for luck into the jet engine, and naturally, jet engines don't like coins. Apparently, they're not coin operated, and so this guy. So anyway, they have the flight is delayed, and everyone who's ready to get on and they're like, "Who's this guy?" And he's like, "Hey, it brings good luck. It brings good luck." So you know how some people will believe anything, right? So if you're here tonight, raise your hand because shave your head, it brings you good luck. RJ doesn't want me telling bald jokes, but yeah. All kinds of crazy. Then the next item that at first I thought was unrelated, the next item that I read was these tourists were on a boat and they're traveling through like the jungles. Must have been somewhere in Asia. I don't know. I've never been there, but somewhere in Asia, whatever. And all of a sudden, this orangutan, true story, I read the story, this orangutan comes out of a tree, lands in their boat, and slaps this guy. Turns out it's the Chinese guy who threw the coin in the jet engine. So, no. Karma coming around, but you never know when it's going to meet you, especially an orangutan. But so I got thinking, I'm trying to remember, and I got thinking about, sort of, okay, this is the last show I'm going to do here. I hope this is the last show, and you're hoping too. And so a bunch of you actually showed up and paid money, or will pay money, because you didn't want to miss the last. Like, I've been to, every once in a while I go and I kind of laugh and not so much, but this is going to be the last one, so I want to go. And you get all emotional and sentimental about those kinds of things. Other people are like, the last one, and for them, it's like the last cookie or the last piece of cake. They're like, oh yeah, well, the last cookie, I'll take that, And for others, like Eileen, are you here? For others, it's like at the bar where they do the last call. So some of you are here because you're like, I think I need another one. Yep, this will be good. So, and then others are here. Betty Perkins, are you here? Betty, are you here? For Betty, the last show is kind of like a last breath. Like she'll be dead soon, and she's thinking one last laugh. Like just so I can be there on my hospital bed. You're going to the hospital, or are you just going to pass away? You're just going to go. Yeah. That's why she keeps a bottle of gin by her bed every night. She just sort of like nipple. I'm just going to go. So for her, it's kind of like a last breath. We can only hope, but because it's the last, it got me thinking. About how many times I've done this and when I've done this. And one of the common things that people will say, if I had a nickel for every time somebody said to me this phrase, I could throw them out in an audience. Anyway, no, if I had a nickel for every time somebody said to me, Father, you missed your calling. So I tell a joke or I do a comedy thing and people say, oh, you missed your calling. So before that used to really annoy me. I'm just like, seriously, day in and day out, I'm slogging through trying to teach people the faith and encourage them in the faith and do it, forgive your sins, give you the Eucharist, on and on and on, right? And you're like, oh no, you missed your calling, because all we really want to do is laugh, kind of thing. So you missed your calling. But this year, in preparing for the last show, I took it very seriously. And I will say that when I honestly did an evaluation of my vocation and my calling, I thought, they might be true. I should not have gotten into the business that I got into. Because I think we would all agree that I have not done it very well. What should have told me at the very beginning that this was not going to go well was when I was a senior in college. Poor thing. She's like, oh, he's losing his vocation right on stage. And I was there when that happened. Yeah. Betty's over there. Really? Marry me. Oh, she's been after me for years. It's really sad. She doesn't care how old or ugly I get. So she just keeps getting older and uglier. So we're a great match. But anyway, so poor thing. You're saying, why pick on her? Well, when the lights come up, then you'll see. But anyway, when I was a senior in college and they said to me, or I went to them and they're, everyone's going around saying, oh, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? I'm going to go back to school. A lot of people were saying they're going back to school, even though they never went back to school because they didn't know what to say. They didn't want to admit that they were going to go get a job at the grocery store or McDonald's or whatever it was, whatever they could possibly find. And because I went to a liberal arts school. But anyway, so I would go up to them and I'd say, in a very soft voice or whatever, they say, what are you going to do? And I'd say, well, I'm going to the seminary. And I would get one of two reactions. One is that they would just burst out laughing because I've told jokes all my life, and they thought that was the biggest joke that I had ever told. And then other people just had that look of horror and shock on their face. They're like, what? What? I said, I think I'm going to try the seminary. Really? And that's the face that I was remembering, when people would say, I think you missed your calling. And when I was doing that sort of deep examination of my life or whatever, and I was like, yeah, because I really have not done this. Now, the things that the obvious ones, like, how many thousands of times I have lost my place in the Mass. Right? And it's gotten to the point where people don't even bother mentioning it to me, like after Mass. They're like, they used to say things like, oh, you really messed it up that time, Father. Ha. Now they just kind of looks at me sad. And they realize that now that I'm in my old age, that it's just going to get worse. I'm going to have somebody there standing next to me with their finger and just going over. And then like patting me upside the head, like wake up, And so all of that kind of thing, which is not recommended in the better manuals for being a priest. Not recommended in the better manuals. We know every once in a while it's going to happen, but the number of times that happens. So, okay. So how about the time that I'm in the midst of a joke? And in my mind, it's cataloged, because I have all the jokes cataloged. In my mind, it's cataloged the would-I joke. Some of you know what that is. I'm not going to get into it. It was Sister Agnes Marie's favorite joke, or the only one she could remember. But anyway, some would remember it as the would-I joke. And the problem is the other person with the disability, deformity, whatever, had a hair lip. And I'm in the midst of telling the hair lip joke to a guy with a hair lip. Exactly. So now just sit with that for a little bit. Imagine yourself, okay, so this poor guy has, and whatever he's had to live through, and there I am, his parish priest, telling the hair lip joke. So now you ask yourself, should I? Probably not. How about the pastor, my first pastor, when I'm sitting there at the dining room table, and so we're eating whatever and all this kind of thing. And he takes a piece of bread or a muffin or whatever it is, and he looks up at me and he sort of nods over to the preserves, and he says, the raspberry. And so I look at him and I say, you want the raspberry? And he goes, yes. And then I look at him and I say, are you sure? And this is an older man. This is a man like in his 70s, and he's getting ready to retire. You know, the poor guy, and he's looking at me, and there I am, I don't know how long, a year, 2 years ordained, and I'm saying to him, you're sure you want the raspberry? And he goes, yes. So I go, see, now you're on my side a little bit more, aren't you? Now you're thinking, well, that was a really, really stupid thing to do. Oh, I got a million of them. These are just the ones that I feel like I can tell you. These are the ones that I can tell you that you would never tell anybody if you did them, right? You would be like, no, I'm not doing that. But these are the ones I can tell you. So recently in COVID, the bishop sent out some directives to us, all kinds of things about masks and cups and jugs and kettles and beds and whatever. And we had to do all of this kind of stuff. And then he said, on the pastoral side, he said, you should call 5 people a day, which makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. Like, okay, yeah, just keep, and he's saying like, keep in touch with people so that, you know, they don't feel like nobody cares about them. They're just out there drifting, you know, like whatever. Makes perfect sense. Perfect suggestion. Great, great. So what do? I decide I'm only going to call 5 people, but I'm going to call them every day. So there was the one guy that I would call who is no longer a parishioner. I would just call every day. I would just call every day from our phone that says St. Mary's Parish. You know, beep, 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 comes through. Everybody's got the ID, caller ID, or whatever it is, you know, kind of thing. So he goes, hello, and I go, click. Well, to be fair, the bishop didn't say that I should talk to them. He just said, call them every day. And then there was the one lady who was getting a little forgetful. Not Alzheimer's, just getting a little forgetful. And I would call her. She would qualify as 2 of my calls. I'd call her. We'd chat for a little bit. I'd hang up. I'd wait about 20 minutes, and I'd call her again. And she'd say, Father, why are you calling again? And I said, what? No, that was yesterday. See? Now you're on my side. Now you understand. And that one reminded me of another one that I had done when cremation was first possible for Catholics. You know, we're talking a number of years back. I was in another parish, and everyone was asking, can we get cremated? Can't we get cremated? You can get cremated, sure, but I'm just not going to bury you out of the church kind of thing. Well, they wanted to know when they could actually, you know. So then finally, I forget who it was, one of the bishops came along and said, sure, you can bring the cremated remains, or as we say in the business, the cremains. You can bring the cremains into church. So one of the first times, I don't know exactly who it was, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but I was a little bit upset, you know, because this was something new and I wasn't for it, you know, all that kind of thing. And so they came in and they were carrying, the funeral director or whatever was carrying the urn. And I know most of you want to be cremated. Great. Maybe not after the story. But anyway, so then they hand me the little urn. And they say, Father, do we have a table somewhere? Or can we put I said, sure. So I go in the back. And I'm like, wait a minute. So I go and get my old flip phone. And I take off the top. And I put it in the ashes. And then I put it out in the church. And because the best ones, you know, come a little later. So then we go through the whole Mass. And then we go through almost the whole burial. I finish, I turn away from the family, giving my condolences, and then I call the number. No, I didn't do that. See? See? You're like, oh, you are a horrible, horrible person. Why would you ever do that kind of thing? Well, some things I wouldn't do. Beth, can I have a glass? I think I asked for a glass. I'll just drink it right out of the jug. This is an old shtick, right? This is an old whiskey bottle that I have, a whiskey decanter. And so every year I pretend that I'm drinking whiskey up here because, well, I'm not supposed to. So, but I get thirsty when I'm talking. So, anyway, thank you. We're almost finished this category, but I would have to say that once upon a time, a fellow and his girlfriend, they wanted to get married or something, and they came to the parish. Well, this poor guy, I don't know that I had ever really met him. No. I don't know that I had ever really met him or whatever, but at one point, I'm asking their names. And he says to me, and it would be worse now because of my hearing, but even back then, he said to me, Mathan. So I immediately thought, Mathan was the father of Jacob, who was the father of Joseph, who was the foster father of Jesus. And I'm like, that you pick that out of the genealogy of Jesus from Matthew's gospel? Mathan, like that's great. That's really good. And his girlfriend or wife or whatever turns to me and said, no. So I'm going, Mathan, that's great. And I'm about to go on about how unusual this name is and everything. And she goes, no, it's Mason. I have no regard for people's disabilities, apparently, whatsoever. Incredibly insensitive, whatever. And now with my own disability, like I can't hear. So when Larry's yelling stuff at me, I can't hear what he's saying. I know it's Larry or somebody from back there in the dark yelling stuff. I can't hear what you're saying. I can interpret it all kinds of ways. But the good thing is, I'm not the only one that gets it wrong. So this past year, I was watching like the Passion of the Christ. So it must have been in Lent or Holy Week or something. I'm watching the Passion of the Christ. And because I can't hear anything, I always have the subtitles on when I'm watching Prime. Okay? So they're just always on. When I turn on something on Prime Video or whatever, they're always subtitles. So there's Jesus on the cross. And he's calling out, and I'll tell you in a second what he's calling out, but he's calling out, and then I start laughing. I mean, now I know he sees everything that I do and all that kind of thing, but it was uncalled for. It was just really uncalled for. So Jesus is calling out, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. And what the subtitles print out is, yeehaw, yeehaw, Mitzi's got it in for me. And here is one of the most sacred moments of all history. And somehow, some subtitle person managed to make it hilarious. Yeehaw! Yeehaw! Anyway, I hope you can go home tonight and forget all about that. But so I probably have to write. I have to write those people that said, "I don't think you have a vocation," or "Father, you may," and I need to write them and say, "You're right. You're right." But it's kind of too late for me now, so just gonna have to go with it. Have you read about amnesty boxes? You haven't read about it. So amnesty boxes. Well, you've kind of heard of the concept. It's a confessional box. You go in, you confess your sins, you get to leave it all there, all your junk, right? So we came up with it first. But then you'll know that the public library also came up with it, right? And so they have like these boxes that they put out. And if you put your way overdue books in there, they just want to get the books back. They don't care about how long it's been. So they have like these amnesty boxes for library books, which is great, Then, for a bunch of people like Betty, they decided that they were going to come up with medication boxes, right? So if you have old medication and you want to get rid of it, you take it to the police station and they... Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, they're supposed to put it in an amnesty box. They're supposed, and then they figure out how to dispose of it. But then recently what I saw in one of the western states, when you were crossing the state line, because one state marijuana was legal and the other state it wasn't, they set up these little amnesty boxes. So when you were leaving the state, you could leave your marijuana in the box and not break the law in the next state. Well, I was like, man, I got to see this for myself. I stood in line for 3 days outside, just waiting for somebody to dump their marijuana in the box. And apparently, everybody else got the same idea. I had bolt cutters, everything. I was ready to go. So one of the things that happened this past year was I was reading the label of Pepperidge Farm apple turnovers. Now, I read the label after I had eaten the turnovers. Part of it was making sure that there were only 6 in the box. I thought there were going to be 8, but there were only 6 in the box, and somehow they all disappeared. And then I was checking the ingredient because I'm thinking, did they put cocaine in this or something? Like, why do I just want another one? You know, kind of thing. And then I'm reading through the ingredients, and it says real apples were used in the production of this product. And all of a sudden, I distrusted everything in the world. I'm thinking, if you have to say that there are apples, real apples in an apple turnover, what kind of a world do we live in? This is horrible. This is horrible. And so I remember when I was young, I think this was a thing, and maybe some of you will know, there was a thing called the Truth in Advertising Commission. Do you remember that? There was like this Truth in Advertising Commission, and I think they all got enough bribes so they quit or whatever, you know, because now it seems like they can just say and do anything they want. And that's why it's real, you know, that's why some companies are saying that, and I look down and there's a Sharpie. And I'm like, yeah, you're not sharp. You're a dully. You're just a big fat marker. And so I got really upset with how they're naming things or whatever. And then, of course, it occurred to me, I looked up at my Apple computer. I'm like, wait a minute. There were no apples used in the production of this Apple computer, Apple Watch, Apple anything. And I thought, oh man, this is just terrible. What is the world coming to? We can't trust the names of anything. I just need to get this off my chest. Have you ever, well, first off, when you do your laundry, do you ever use those little bounce sheets in the, or they might be called dryer sheets if you're using a really cheap brand or whatever, or little bounce sheets. In the winter, I have to use them, otherwise they have all kinds of electricity. In the summer, I don't use them, but in the winter, I have to use them. And I suppose if you're wearing a dress, it doesn't make any difference. It's slightly embarrassing. You just kind of like, but what happens to them is that they cling to things, you know, sort of, you got a skirt, you got a dress, and you kind of, but if you're wearing trousers, they can be really, really awkward. And it all depends on where they end up. If they end up close to your backside, you're good. You're good. That thing's never, ever going to move. And you probably won't ever know that it's actually there. Dogs are really going to be curious. Because they know what you should smell like. They're not offended at all, but they know what you should smell like, and they're like, wait a minute. A lovely vanilla spring breeze or something, They're like, how did that get there? Like, was it something you ate? Yes, as a matter of fact. But if it's like in your trousers, anywhere along like the back of your leg, on your thigh, you don't notice it until finally you notice, wait a minute, that's not the way those pants usually feel. And you're like, what is that? What is that? And then you look around like, is anybody looking at you? And you're like, oh good, no one's like, what is that? I think I've got it. No, I don't. Lost it. You're like, wait a minute, but that's just such an... And you say, I can't figure it out. I'm late. I got to get to my appointment. I got to whatever. And so off you go, in and out, da-da-da-da-da. Then all of a sudden it shifts, right? Now it's on the bottom half of your pants. And you're like, no. And you're like, whoa, nope, can't get it because it's just a little bit. And then you're thinking, maybe I just undo my belt and just go down. And you say, no. I am not going to be fishing around in my pants for 5 minutes just waiting for somebody to show up. And then I have to explain it to them. And I don't even know how to explain it to them because I don't know what that is, right? And so then you're just kind of like, you start like kicking. So because you figure it's moved. Sometimes it happens if it's on the front of your leg and it shifts to your knee and you're like, wait a minute. And then in that there's nothing you can do, so you're just kind of how do I hold my pants and shift my leg to get that thing? And then eventually, with all the little, it'll show itself. Just a little white flag. It's surrendering. It's like, here you go. And so you dryer sheet. Oh, I gotta be more careful to get those dryer sheets. But the best thing is that most of you, that has never happened to, right? Raise your hand if that has never ever happened to you. Oh, see, nobody's going to raise it. Yes, it's never happened to you. Yeah, and they're like, I'm not going to raise my hand, but it's never happened to me. One honest person. What we know is that it has happened to you. and I haven't done it personally, but I've seen it done. Where you've got the skirt and it's sticky and somebody behind you. And you hope it's someone in your family, but it might not be. Just somebody, that little white thing, and they're like, I'm hunting dryer sheets in the wild. And I'm going to do this so that she's not embarrassed later on. Till finally you get it, and you get them. All right. Believe it or not, that's all I got for you tonight. But it's not all I have for you. I want to leave you with this. Feel free to join in. Oh, all the money I ever had, I spent spent it in good company, and all the harm that I've ever done, alas, it was to none but me. And all I've done for want of wit, to memory now I can't recall. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be with you all. Oh, all the comrades I ever had, they're sorry for my going away. And all the sweethearts I ever had, they'd wish me one more day to stay. But since it falls unto my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and softly call, good night and joy be with you all. Good night and thank you.